Hey, we're here with Dr. Chris Calkins from the University of Nebraska at the Range Beef Cow Symposium in Mitchell, Nebraska. And Dr. Calkins, I think, is well known in the industry for some of the work that he's done in the past on the muscle profiling study in beef cattle. It had really helped introduce some of the new products that have added quite a bit of value to the beef animal. And Dr. Calkins is talking about some consumer issues here at the symposium, and wonder if you could just give me a little bit of a summary of some of the things you're telling the folks here today.
You bet. You know, there's been a lot of interest and questions about source verification. Do customers and consumers really value that? And if so, to what extent does that occur? So we did a study where we actually went into some high-end restaurants with source verified steaks. We wanted to find out just how best to communicate about those steaks and also figure out what the value was, if consumers would treasure knowledge of what ranch or state that product was produced from, and if so, to what extent that would occur.
And what kind of results did you see as far as their preferences and maybe what they're willing to pay for some of those verifications?
You bet. You know, we took two approaches to this study. One was we did a survey of over 1,000 consumers, and then about 200 of those in several restaurants, either on the East Coast or in the Southwest of the United States, actually tasted and tested and rated those things. We found some very fascinating results. Number one, it appears that they do appreciate source-verified beef, and they use that information almost as a communication of a promise. That is, that if you're willing to tell them what ranch or state that beef comes from, those consumers believe you're really telling them that's going to be high-quality, grain-fed, highly marbled, flavorful, tender beef. Secondly, we found that the more detail you could provide, that is, identifying the ranch of origin, then they expressed a greater willingness to pay for that. So in a high-end restaurant, they were willing to pay an extra $8 for a steak if they knew that came from the ranch and it was source verified to the ranch. If it was source verified to the steak, it was over $4 if it was identified as being a state of Nebraska steak. On the flip side, if we just said Midwest, that didn't mean much to them at all. They wanted specificity in that information, and they're willing to pay for it.
So there might be some opportunities there for producers to work through some of these verification programs and add value to their cattle if the packer and some of the links down the chain are able to capture that value through that verification.
You're right, and I think we know intuitively that people value that kind of information. Part of this study was to figure out just how much value are they really willing to pay for, how much can be shared up and down the chain to encourage people to provide this kind of information. The other thing we learned a little bit about was something about how those consumers gain information. If they're in a restaurant and there's a new product they don't know anything about, that wait staff, that server is hugely important. Over 9 out of 10 are going to turn to their waiter and ask questions. So we trained the wait staff to do the study, and very clearly that wait staff is an important part of the communication chain as we try and explain to consumers just what it is we have for them.
So maybe that's another opportunity for the industry to get more information into the hands of those people so they can provide accurate information to the customers in the restaurants.
Absolutely. And wait staff, interestingly, are anxious and curious, and they want to know. So we have a willing audience.